I was handed a flyer and it was really an audition for a girl band, you know, asking your age, if you're into music, if you can dance, streetwise. We weren't talking about girl power. It wasn't our agenda. Really, it was thrust upon us. Girl bands didn't sell records. DJing now, it's so accessible. I met a friend who was like, look, just do a lesson, see how you feel. And I fell in love immediately. And it just, you know, brought up all these memories, all these songs, all these sounds, all these experiences. And I was just like, I am so here for this. I kind of haven't looked back.
Listen up. Today, I am joined by Melanie C, who you might also know as Sporty Spice. This is a really special episode. If you're like me, you grew up on Spice Girls, you know their story, you were a part of Spice World, the movie, the shows, they were everywhere. But that was only really 2 years of life for Melanie C. So in this episode, we go right back to growing up in Liverpool, to finding her sound, to being a part of the group, to what that Spice mania really was like, to finding her new sound now. She's about to drop an album in a couple days' time. Sweat, it is dancey, it is clubby. She's a DJ. Do you know that? Well, we're going to get into it all, and I'm very excited for you to hear it. So let's do it. This is Listen Up with me, Ash McGregor, and Melanie C. Melanie C, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Good to be here.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm going to tell you a story about last week. I was at coffee with a friend and he's compiling a list of artists that he think have had a huge cultural moment that have changed, you know, their music has changed, not even just music, but has changed the world. And he was like, Ash, who do you think I should add to the list? And I looked at his list and he had, started off with Elvis, sure, then Beatles, then Nirvana, Justin Bieber, and recently Charlie XCX. And I looked at his list. I was like, oh my God, how are you forgetting Spice Girls? That is just ridiculous. I mean, you guys are obviously one of the biggest cultural phenomenons, especially for women.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think at the time we realized it. I think as time goes on, it becomes, you know, more and more of a legacy that we're so proud of.
Yeah. I mean, this year's 30 years, right?
Yeah. 30 years.
Crazy. But I feel like that would be a blip for you.
Do you know what's really strange is like you go through these phases, I think like 10, 15, 20, you're like, oh my gosh, it's so long. Like when you get to 30, you're like, It's, I believe it's that long. And it's funny though, because we've done so much in that time.
Yeah.
And sometimes you do forget. You forget some of the bits. And when you're reminded of them, you're like, yes, we did that.
Yeah. Well, maybe we could dive into them in this podcast. Because also I think a lot of the audience wouldn't realize is that Spice Girls itself was only, the 5 of you were less than 2 years.
Yeah.
Like it was such a small but very defining time of your life.
It's incredible to think what we achieved in that, like you say, less than 2 years. So we formed as a band in 1994 and we didn't release our first single, Wannabe, until July 96.
Yeah.
And we had, within that time, we released 2 albums, we toured, and we also released a movie. Released a movie.
I know this because I watched it back then.
Which, when we look back and even, you can see there's so much footage, there's so many photo shoots, there's so much work, single releases, videos, and all of that within
2 years.
2 years.
It's crazy.
Nuts.
And then you're coming up with an album on the way in a couple of days' time as well with Sweat. And I feel like we've got so much to dig into in that sense in this new era of Melanie C and embracing the dance side of you and the rave side of you. So let's take it back. Let's go back to Liverpool, just outside of Liverpool where you grew up. I know your parents split when you were quite young and you basically were raised by a single mom on housing, community housing, is that what you would call it?
Yeah.
How do you reckon your childhood defined the person that you are?
Oh, 100%. It did. I think it completely, obviously some of who you are as a person is there in your DNA, but definitely that upbringing, those experiences, they really fueled my determination and just my want to succeed, to find my place in the world. And I think my parents divorcing when I was really young, and then they both remarried and went on to have families. So I have a big, complicated, beautiful family. But I'm the only
sibling, half siblings, they're all everywhere.
all the things, right? Very, big Christmases all over the place. And I'm the only child of my mum and dad. And I think that makes you feel quite alone in the world. Especially if your parents go off. I mean, my parents have both been remarried now for decades, and I've got, you know, my half siblings and step siblings who I love. But there's no one who has my shared experience, you know, and sometimes that can feel quite isolating. And I feel like that made me really determined, and finding a passion for performing really young. It was like, that's it. That's my drive. Do
you think it was performing because it was like a look at me kind of career?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I get so much joy from being on stage. And that happened as soon as I had that experience. And I feel like the way it makes you feel, you know, it can make you feel noticed. It can make you feel loved, adored, all of those things, which are dangerous things too.
Oh, isn't it funny how people who often find themselves in fame are the people who need external validation? And it's the double-edged sword. It's like, well, if you're going to take the validation, you got to take the criticism.
100%. And, you know, I've talked a lot about fame, and my belief that most people who want to be famous are the least equipped to deal with it.
100, yes.
You know, and we see it so many times, and it's heartbreaking how we see people suffer. But yeah, I think as a young person, it's really, really hard to figure out those feelings and where they're coming from.
Especially so young for you.
Yeah.
I know dance was your first passion.
Yeah. So, well, I was like dancing as a kid.
What kind of dance were you doing?
I did ballet was my, you know, I love that. But I did what so many kids in the UK do, and I'm sure it's the same here in Australia. I did ballet, tap, modern, jazz, like national character, all these weird other like subgenres of dance that we did in the 80s in the UK. And it was home for me because school was all right. You know, I've never really been that academic. I was okay. I did okay. I passed all my exams, but it didn't really inspire me like being at dance school did. And I'd be there after school. I'd be there at the weekend. And that was kind of my people. And that's where I found I was more extrovert. I was happier. And that just had to be the world that I went into.
Your parents are performers as well?
My mum is. Yeah, my mum's a singer.
Yeah.
My stepdad is a bass player.
Okay, so it is kind of written in the stars that you would fall into that world.
Yeah, it's kind of funny too, because you know, like when you're a kid and all you know is what you know. So being really little and having loads of musicians around the house and people rehearsing or them having auditions for different bands and things, that was just my norm. And then you get a bit older, you go to your friend's house and it's like, oh, your mum isn't out on a Saturday night singing, you know, and it's like, oh, my mum's quite special. And it made me just feel very proud of her. It made her feel, and she is, very glamorous.
Yeah.
And then I used to go and see her and, you know, sit and kind of watch her on stage with everybody watching her. So there was definitely lots of influences from, you know, different perspectives on this whole industry.
100%. And then also it's like when you have parents who do those left of field jobs, you never have to have that conversation where you go, hey, Mom, I want to commit myself to the arts.
Yeah.
And sometimes for a lot of artists that's in this chair, break their parents' heart a little bit because it's so scary seeing your child go out into
it's so scary. You know, it's one of those industries that's really hard to get into, really, you know, hard to maintain, sustain. And yeah, so my dad he works in sports travel. Well, he's just retired, even though he's always on trips. But he, you know, very different. And he's a music lover, but never a performer. And he was more nervous. So I had from him the kind of, oh, you know, what's the backup? What's the plan B?
You had the angel and the devil on the shoulder.
Yeah, totally. So my mum was always like, she just got it. And she was like, you know, support you no matter what. And which my dad has also done. But he was more nervous than she was.
I feel like your parents are similar to mine in the sense where my mum was like, never do a backup plan. My mum changed her career when she was like 50. She goes, I regret spending all those years. And then now she does what she does now. She's an Indigenous artist. And then my dad has always had trepidation, but he's also the kind of person who goes, whatever you believe, you've always managed to make it happen. And so he goes, watch out, but also I believe that you will make it happen because that's just the type of person you are.
Wow.
And I feel like you're also
how
like that.
beautiful for, a parent to recognize that.
Yeah.
Because I think as parents, parenting is like becoming famous. It's like, there's no book to teach you how to do it. I mean, people try and write them and try and make them, but it's your experience and you're learning on the ground, on your feet.
Yeah.
And I think as a parent, you're so protective of your child. And then you're like, at the same time, you don't want to be overprotective. You don't want to ruin them. So it's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
Yeah.
I know you've told this story so many times on podcasts, but for my audience, and we always love hearing it. All right, you get handed a flyer. It's 1994. Are you at school still at this point, or you're in college at this point?
Yeah, I think I'd left college at this point. So I went to Performing Arts College when I was 16. I left home. I moved from the north of England all the way down to London. The UK's little, compared to you Aussies, but for us Brits, it was a long way from home. I was 16. It was before my mobile phones, right? My mum used to get a phone call from a payphone once a week. And I was down there until I was, I think 17, I lived with a family. So, we did have that like guidance. But I was, studying performing arts, and I'd left. I think the summer of 93 is when I left, and I started auditioning for West End shows and commercial stuff like music videos, different things. And I'd been auditioning a lot, and I'd got a few little bits and pieces, but no solid work. And it was getting to the point where, it was getting tough. I was a student for 3 years, and then I'm unemployed. So, my family I never had a lot of money. It was always like just enough money to like cover the bills, Yeah. So it gets a bit daunting when everything's been thrown at this career, and then all of a sudden it's like, God, do I need to get another job? Do I need to think about,
am I going to be 20 and already giving up on the dream?
Yeah. So that was a scary moment. But then I was handed a flyer, and it was really an audition for a girl band, asking your age, if you're into music, if you can dance, streetwise. That's the one that always tickles me.
I don't even know what that really means.
What does that mean?
What is streetwise?
Streetwise.
Have a pizzazz about it.
Yeah, but being a performer, you have to adapt as well. So it's so funny. I love all the stories of like people who on their CV, like whether you're an actor or you're a dancer, it'll be like, oh, can you roller skate? Yes. Can you speak French? Yes. I mean, none of these things you can do. Can you ride a horse? Yes. I mean, just fake it till you make it, right? So I went along to the audition, and I think there was a good few hundred girls at this audition, and we had to dance, very superficial from the get-go. And we danced, and then if you looked right and had a bit of rhythm, you got called back to sing. And there's videos out there if you want to go and have a look.
I haven't seen it.
But it was just another audition, but it did feel special because although I was training in performing arts and potentially looking to work in the theatre, I did want to break the music industry, but I just knew it was hard.
Definitely. Do you feel like, I remember my first time in radio, one of my first mentors, were you across High Five? This is maybe a very Australian thing, but they're like children's television.
Yeah, is it very colourful?
Yeah, and it's like 5 performers, and it's very song and dance. In the same way Wiggles is for children, it was like High Five was for kids.
Okay.
And one of my first mentors in radio was Charlie from High Five, who I grew up with, and I loved her. And she was always like, I was married to TV and I was cheating on TV with radio. Do you feel like you were married to dance and then cheating on dance with singing?
Oh, yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it. For me, because my mum was a singer and she had deals like in the 70s, but it had never gone the way she wanted it to go, So I knew it was really hard. And I think that was the fear, and I think also, coming from a working class background in the north of England, it's pretty hard to get through. And, music is one of the only ways to break away. And, music and sport in a lot of communities is a way for you to, to break free, to start a new beginning. And, and I thought theatre felt like a much more sensible route.
Yeah.
I'm quite a practical person. But then even that's ridiculous because it's really hard to get into theatre as well.
100%.
There's so few jobs compared to how many people want to do it, right?
Yeah. So tell me about the callback. I know you had tonsillitis for your callback.
I did. So at the time I kept getting tonsillitis and I was so sick. I got a recall, couldn't make it. I couldn't speak, let alone sing. So then I was like, I begged Mum. I was like, Mum, please, 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 just tell them I'll be better in like a week or two. And she called them and she asked them for me, and they were like, no, sorry, we've got the girls now, we've got the 5. And it just felt like it's one of those, you're a performer, you get the knockbacks, brush yourself off and start again, right? And a couple of weeks later, I got another phone call to just say, one of the girls hasn't worked out, we'd like you to come down and sing for us. And I was like, what?
Let's go.
And I went down and I met Geri, Mel B, Victoria, and a girl called Michelle. Mm-hmm. And I sang Signed, Sealed, Delivered, Stevie Wonder. And that was it. I was in the band and it kind of...
What were your first impressions of them?
Okay, so my first impressions...
Were you a bit like, oh, fuck, I'm coming into like an established dynamic. They've known each other for a couple of weeks now. They're auditioning me as well?
A little bit like that. I mean, I was being judged, and that's something you're used to in those circumstances. But you know what's funny? My memories of it are just like how incredible the girls were. And like Geri I remember it so vividly. She had on like a pink mohair jumper and she used to wear these pointy like 1950s bras. And so she had these pointy boobs like hoisted right up. She had like 2 little bunches in and she was like yapping like a dog, always just so bubbly and quirky, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then Mel B, she had on like this like baseball jacket and she had like a Kangol hat on and like all her curly hair sticking out. And she was like from the north, she's got that accent. She's from Leeds, Yorkshire lass. And I just thought she was the coolest person I'd ever met. And then Victoria was much more reserved and, and cool, just really cool. Yeah. And it's funny, Michelle was different. But it's funny how my first impressions of them haven't really changed. They truly are those people.
Yeah. I mean, that's what's so unique about you as a band. And like, I know Michelle didn't end up being in the band. She got replaced by Emma. But, that you all from day dot had personalities and very individual and, that's what made the Spice Girls so unique. Whereas you think about a lot of groups where they had to, on a world stage, try and figure out their identity along the way. Yeah. Especially so young.
Yeah. And it's crazy because, we did that. What's so different now, and, it's obviously working on a show like The Voice, there are so many bands that have been discovered kind of through that format. And there's nowhere to hide. You're figuring out who you are in the, on the world stage. Whereas for Spice Girls, we did everything behind closed doors. So, we made a lot of the mistakes and we tried and experimented without anybody seeing it, which is the beauty of like, pre the internet, I suppose.
Yeah. And also just the record label system was different back then, like getting in advance, being able to incubate for 2 years until you're ready to showcase as well. Yeah.
I think it feels like it was pretty quick, once we'd signed with Virgin Records, because we, honestly, the whole story at the time, we were just gung-ho. We were just doing our thing. We were super confident. We knew we had something special. We didn't have a clue what we were doing. We were just going for it. But looking back with hindsight, it's like, wow, we left the original management because they were trying to mold us into a girl band that just coordinates their outfits on stage and sings these songs that are being written by these middle-aged white guys who didn't have a clue what it was to be a young woman growing up in the 90s. And it just, none of it sat well with us. Yeah. So we took a leap, Again, we had nothing. These guys were funding us. I think we were kind of on benefits at the time because we weren't earning any money.
Feel like you had to owe it to them? Because are they the group that genuinely put you together?
Yeah.
Because I would feel like, oh, well, I'm a product that they've made. Like they've put us together to make this product. I must see it through.
We didn't feel like that.
That's
we
amazing.
Were like, they don't know what they've got. They're wasting our time. I mean, that was what was so brilliant about the girls and I'm so grateful to them for that because I'm such a good girl, and I have like massive guilt, or the Irish Catholic guilt over here. But no, with the girls, it was like, no, we're better than this. They can't see it. Watch right in front of them because they were always trying to slow us down, hold us back a little bit, which, I'm sure was the sensible thing to do. But we were like, no time. We've got to go. We've got to do this thing. So we went out there and we quite sneakily got them to put on a showcase for us. So we did a few of these songs that we'd been rehearsing and had recorded, written by other people. And we sat in front of producers, songwriters, and we knew we were going to leave the original management, but we needed to make these contacts because none of us had worked in the music industry. So yeah, it was all a bit sneaky.
That night you're networking like no tomorrow, you're shaking hands.
But it was wild as well because that was the first time we'd had an audience. And I've had this once before in my life. And this is when I made the decision I wanted to be a singer and not a dancer. When you feel an audience shift. And when we first started to perform in front of songwriters and producers and some record company people, there was this kind of like, you know, people starting to take notice. And you could just tell the atmosphere in the room changed. And we were like, yeah, we do have something special here. There's just something about the dynamic that's really sparky.
That's so interesting. Because as someone who attends a lot of industry showcases, they can be quite pretty scathing for a young artist. A lot of industry's talking over you. There's a lot of people there with crossed arms. And I can imagine you all on stage, you know, we got to win them over.
Yeah.
And it would be,
we were so naive, but it was brilliant. It was kind of the best thing to do because we didn't care, you know, and I think we were just like so defiant.
Oh, that's so incredible. I wish I had this at 20.
I know, right? I wish I had it now. But it was like, I just love thinking about it. And I know I wouldn't have done it on my own. You know, it was because it was the energy that we shared, the five of us. It was this belief we had in ourselves and each other.
How special to have found that five. That is a real stars aligning. That one, each of you brings such a different dynamic, but that dynamic works so well together. And that you recognize that without you, I couldn't have made it this far, and we're stronger together.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Especially, and I hate saying this, but especially for women, that it's such a tear down mentality especially in entertainment, and that you guys were like, nope, rising tide floats all boats.
Oh my gosh, it was such an interesting time for us because, you know, obviously when we first got together, we weren't talking about girl power. It wasn't our agenda. It was thrust upon us because we were told by record companies that girl bands didn't sell records because all the fans were young girls who wanted to marry the boy band member. And we were like, fuck that. We were like, we need to be a girl band for girls.
Yeah.
And that just evolved and continued to grow. And even like the individuality thing, it's like, yeah, we all were really different and we kept trying to dress similarly and someone always felt uncomfortable and looked a bit odd. And then one day we were in rehearsals and like Geri just looked in the mirror and I had my trackie on and she had one of her little op shop outfits on and, you know, Mel B was in, you know, something cool. The leopard print hadn't quite hit by then. But we just looked very different, very individual. And Geri just looked in there and went, why don't we just dress the way we dress? And so it was just
it's crazy
organic,
that's groundbreaking, isn't it?
Yeah. And then people are like, oh, it was brilliant marketing. Oh, some great men came up with that marketing idea. And we're like, no, it just happened. It wasn't even our brilliant idea. It just happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, because my brain goes like, okay, Spice Girls, it's like a Spice Rack, and then you had all the different flavors. That's how it came to be, right?
Well, Spice, we were called Spice because we were different. Yeah. That was something that we did think about. Yeah. And then there was a rapper called Spice in the US, so we had to add the girls. And, you know, which we're really grateful for because, you know, it's the entity now. It's powerful. It's the thing. But yeah, it is. It's kind of strange. We were given all these gifts. Even the nicknames were something that was given to us by the editor of a magazine. And it was a throwaway article in a mag one week and they just stuck.
Did you choose for them to stick or did the public choose for them to stick?
Well, I think we realised that they were catching on. People were using them. And then in the US, they didn't even know our real names. They just called us by these nicknames. And we were like, well, this is perfect.
It solves the Melanie problem.
It solves the Melanie problem, right? Because at one point it was like, well, someone's going to have to change their name. And we were like, no, we don't want to. Yeah. So there was a B and a C. And and then the nicknames were this beautiful gift. And then it just helped us kind of really solidify this individuality, these characters, almost caricatures of, you know, what we became. And in a way, at times, that could be a little bit of a shield from who you were in real life.
Yeah. Well, Hannah Montana moment, when I'm Melanie, this is who I am. And then when I'm Sporty, this is who I am. Did you ever feel like when you got gifted those nicknames that it really pigeonholed you?
It's so funny. I get asked that a lot, and I suppose I've my relationship with my nickname has changed a lot over the years, depending on where I'm at in my life. But it actually is me. I've tried to run away from Sporty, but she's too fast. She just keeps catching me.
That's a good bit. I like that.
But yeah, it's redundant for me to try and not be Sporty. And I think there's been times when I've not performed with the girls for a long time. And then we get back together and we do Wannabe. And then all of a sudden I'm like 20 again going.
Yeah.
And it's like, she's there. She's not going anywhere.
Yeah. She's just been in dormant, hibernation. Because when I think of the nicknames as well, and I know you've been very, very open in the past about the 2000s and how dark that place was for you.
Yeah.
But when I think about the nicknames, a lot of them are aesthetics. But for Sporty specifically, it isn't just an aesthetic, it is a lifestyle. You've got to look athletic. Yeah. It's not just a costume you can put on. And I think that comes with such an extra added weight out of all of the group.
Yeah, I think obviously there were times when I almost rebelled against it. Yeah. I think, you talk about the dark times and around the millennium. It was really tough. I'd spent years being in the band, being in the public eye as a young person. The British tabloid media were horrific at those times. They were so intrusive. They were bullies. They were nasty. And they built a narrative around not only myself, the other Spice Girls, every woman in the public eye. Nobody, got away with it. And it was hard as a young person, especially a vulnerable young person who wants to be loved, who wants to be liked. And it's hard to read those things, see those nasty photographs. And I'd started to develop an eating disorder when I was in the band. And I think a lot of that was, being photographed a lot, seeing images of yourself and feeling unworthy of this fame and this success, and feeling like I had to be the absolute best version of myself to be worthy of these accolades. But unfortunately, that was very askew in my mind, and I couldn't reach this perfection, and I was over-exercising. I was, wasn't eating enough, and we obviously weren't resting enough because our schedule was crazy. And that kind of caught up with me. And when I started working on my first solo record, Northern Star, I was in LA in 1999, and I was like, I can't carry on like this. And that's when I really started to feel really low. I was diagnosed with depression. And I had to face, I was in denial for a long time about my eating disorder, but I knew I couldn't continue in that way. But I didn't see myself having an option, because the tabloid media at that time in the UK was so predatory. I knew they were watching my every move. So it was a really horrible situation to be in.
Yeah.
And it took its toll. So it took me a good few years to really get myself back on track.
Yeah. But it's all when you are a product of someone who is under a fine-tooth comb, under a microscope at every given moment. And, when you have your face up on random magazines with labels next to it, people saying that you're this, you're that, you start believing it.
Yeah. Oh, it's so confusing because you're reading about yourself, but you don't recognize the person you're reading about, And then so you're questioning, who am I? Am I that person? Am I who I think I am? I can't speak for everybody in this situation, but I think it's quite common to just be very confused, and it's very unnerving. Yeah.
Did you lean on the girls a lot during that time?
You know what? Sadly, I didn't. I think we did in some sense. We always had each other's backs when it came to the media, because we were the only 5 people in the world who was going through that thing, right? So we were always there in that sense, but everyone was dealing with their own situation in their own way. And I think for me, because I was very ashamed of my issues, it made it hard for me to reach out to people.
Yeah. And then you're like, I don't want to put my issues onto other people as well. And you're like, I'm a burden.
Yeah.
Does that change the way that you parent as a as a mum of a daughter now, like having gone through all of that?
Definitely. I think with everything in life, we have to take from our experiences, good and bad.
Yeah.
It's a learning experience, right? And so having a daughter, I think that's very important for me to be aware of these things. And I feel grateful in a sense that I've had that experience. God forbid my daughter would ever go through any of those things. But yeah, I feel like I'm better equipped potentially to deal with it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, take me back to Wannabe though.
Wannabe, crazy ass song.
It drops. It does astronomically well for a debut. How does that happen? It's just crazy. But it's also, you're in the world of pre-social media. It's the world of monoculture. Is it true you were in Japan and you flew back home and you realized that everything had changed?
Yeah, 100%. So Wannabe was one of the first songs we wrote. And I don't know whether we ever thought it would see the light of day. It was with our favourite songwriter, collaborators, producers, Matt and Biff. And together we've written Wannabe, Spice Up Your Life, Viva Forever, To Become One, Goodbye. I mean,
all the iconic hits.
Yeah, all the biggies. And they probably knew us better than anyone. They were one of the first people we went in to work with. And we were in this tiny little studio in East London called Strong Room. It's still there, beautiful studio. We've managed to save it when so many studios have died away. And we were in this tiny room, 5 girls, 2 guys, and they were like, right, we just want you to do anything. We want to capture who you are. So sing anything, rap anything, shout anything, just get in the booth and do your thing. And that's how Wannabe came about. And we had silly little sayings. We were a clique little group of girls. And we just literally kind of vomited down the microphone. And Matt, being a great producer, took it away and created a song.
Beautiful.
As soon as we heard it, we were like, well, that has to be our first single.
Yeah.
Because they had literally done what they set out to do, which was to kind of bottle that energy, that chaos of what the Spice Girls
That is so rare.
Yeah.
Just being like, free reign, do whatever.
Do you think
that when you then progress onto album 2, album 3, that you were still trying to recreate that essence of like when we had no expectations placed on us?
Album 1, I mean, and all artists have this, right?
Yeah.
You have so much time. You have so much inspiration. It's like a life's worth of inspiration going into that first record. Album 2, you've been promoting around the world. We were making a movie at the same time. And in a sense, we'd obviously had these brand new experiences. And that's what's so beautiful about Spice World. It's like we'd gone around the world. We'd had this success. We'd experienced these new cultures, these new places. And, oh, God, goosebumps thinking about that. And then we'd come home. It was Brits 97. We were embraced by the UK. It was just, life was magic. It was like all of our wildest dreams had come true and then some. We were just living this fairy tale. And we went into the studio, we started work on the record, we started making the movie, we were on set of the movie, going off to a mobile studio. And I think that album benefited from the chaos, because it was there was loads of new inspo, but it was just this whole new incredible world. We had so much energy and there was a really good output.
Yeah.
By album 3,
here we go.
Geri had left and we're like, we're all loaded at this point, right? We've got loads of money, loads of fame.
We're chilling.
Can't be arsed, But it wasn't that. We wanted to make another record. It was really important to us. But we're human beings, Some of the girls had fallen into really serious relationships. And I'd worked on my solo records. Do we need a new direction? We started working with Darkchild, who were amazing. We took a little bit more of an R&B. I mean, it wasn't really pure Spice Girls anymore.
And in that moment, you realized, you knew that.
Yeah, and it was hard. And, I love the girls and, always have. We've had our ups and downs. But at that point, I'd had experience of being a solo artist. I'd been in the studio. I'd written and recorded an album. I'd had the freedom. I'd not had to compromise. I'd not had to, agree to disagree, all of the things that come with being in a band. And I was a bit like, oh, I quite like being on my own, you know? And as much as I would never, ever would not appreciate being a Spice Girl, it was time. It was time to just have a little bit of a breather from that madness.
Oh, I can. The thing is I can sit there and go, I can imagine, but only you will really know what that actually was like. And it just sounds like you had 30 hours in a day, you know, like the amount of stuff that you had to go through and manage to find relationships amongst all of this work and the balance of work and life and trying to
and it was pretty lonely for me because I lived in the south of England and I'd left all my friends and family in the north, but you know, Victoria, Emma and Geri were all from the south, and Mel B, you know, had a partner at the time. So for me, if we weren't on the road, I was in my little 1-bedroom rental in North London.
What whiplash that would be.
It was an interesting experience. And it's funny to say that, you know, I felt quite isolated. And then I did want to go and pursue being a solo artist because that's even more isolating in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it worked out.
It worked out all right. And I think, it's a shame, isn't it? And I think so many bands have a similar experience where the workload is so heavy, it's unsustainable. So, you know, other bands have gone out, you know, someone like One Direction or Take That or our amazing girl band we have, whose name has just escaped me for 1 minute.
Well, even like
British
at the moment,
girl band.
I would say even like the K-pop groups, and like I look at them and just think that's just
it's relentless,
phenomenal.
Yeah, and a lot of bands do last longer than the Spice Girls, but there comes a time when it's almost like it implodes. Yeah.
When you think about your first album, Northern Star, and now from the lens of who you are today, someone who's gone through such big, you know, self-discovery, who you are outside of a group, you've figured out who you are, what your sound is, and specifically like now you're progressing into the dance world, the DJ world, the rave side of you. When you think about Northern Star, what comes to mind about that album?
I feel so proud of that record, and it feels like, is prophetic the right word? There were so many songs on that album that went on to mean so much more than I realised at the time. Those sessions for me, I was in my element because I was in LA. I love LA. I've always found it like such an inspiring place to work. I was working with songwriters I'd looked up to, that I'd worked on some of my favourite records. I worked with Rick Knowles, who was heavily involved with Ray of Light, as was William Orbit, my favourite Madonna record, my absolute idol growing up as an aspiring young artist. And I was there, I was doing it, I was living it. And I couldn't, you know, I was there because of my success with the Spice Girls, but I was doing it on my own, you know, on my own terms. And it just felt really prolific as well. It was just, it was easy. It was just coming. It was great.
I feel like this is going to sound stupid, but I feel like I've experienced that in a micro way, as I'm an identical twin. And I remember in university finding friends for the first time by myself and being like, oh, are my friends with me because of who I am in this dynamic, in this duo? Are they friends with me because they love us together as a group? Or are they friends with me because they genuinely love me for me? And then for you in an artist sense, it's like, oh no, people want to work with me because I'm Melanie.
Yeah.
And not because I'm Spice Girls.
Yeah. And I know that I can completely understand that. I can't imagine your whole life, obviously, because you come as a pair, right, don't you?
That's all I've ever known.
Which is gorgeous and lovely and has all these incredible benefits. Yeah. But then there's always another side to everything, isn't there?
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, this new era of you, as someone who's watched it since 2018, and this, you know, when you've come out as a DJ as well, and then you've really embraced the rave side of your younger years. What are they called? The fucking year 4.
I love that. It's only here in Australia that people have really picked up on that. I love it. And my friends, who are the other 3 members of the fucking year 4.
Can you explain the fucking year 4 for people who don't quite get it?
There was 4 of us. We were at college together. We were all training to be dancers, and we went on our first holiday without parents.
Yeah.
We went to Spain, the Costa Brava, and at that time, the whole rave scene was really sweeping across Europe. And I'd never heard this music before, anything like it. I'd never seen anything like it. People dancing all these crazy moves all night long. And of course, because we were dancers, we were like, this is a bit of me. I'm feeling this.
Yeah.
So we just discovered it. And then when we got back to London, we were determined to find this scene. And, we were a little bit too young to kind of do the whole warehouse party scene and, driving around the M25 and waiting to go to a call box to find out where the location was and to get shut down by the police. And, I just missed that. And it was getting a bit more mainstream. It was going into clubs, but it still felt edgy.
Oh, yeah.
And it was this whole voyage of discovery. It was incredible. And I just, those moments, it was incredible. I was 19? And then I met the Spice Girls when I was 20. So it was very short-lived this whole time, but it had such an impact on me. And I had to put it to one side for all of those years. And then when I talked about wanting to DJ and never having, back in the day, it was all vinyl, So that was very difficult to compare to what it's like now. CDJs we love, right? Yeah. I keep promising myself I'm going to try and learn how to do it, but it keeps getting put on the back burner. But DJing now, it's so accessible. I met a friend who was like, look, just do a lesson, see how you feel. And I fell in love immediately. And it just, brought up all these memories, all these songs, all these sounds, all these experiences. And I was just like, I am so here for this. And I kind of haven't looked back. It's just continued to grow. I've been playing in Ibiza, doing a little residency for 5 years now. And as a Spice Girl, it's fucking daunting because I couldn't go into DJing on the down low. It's all eyes were on. But that's good. I work good under pressure. And then one of my first gigs was at Glastonbury, and it was just
that is just so silly, isn't it?
Right. Yeah.
There's no room to fail.
There was no room to fail. And I think when the stakes are high like that, you rise to the occasion.
I think you suit DJing so well because hearing at the start of the interview when I had that moment with the crowd and you could feel the exchange.
Yeah.
That's what DJing is.
Absolutely.
You're having an exchange with the crowd. You're taking them through a journey, and it's a journey of your own taste.
Yeah.
And I think that is so beautiful.
Yeah.
And this is where I think Sweat, the album that's coming out in a couple of days' time, people are going to really fucking love it.
Oh,
This is such a return to you and yourself.
It's so true. So, there's so much more to come musically because it's been a really productive time. But this album has so been inspired by being out there clubbing, being out there with my people. Do you know what I mean? That's how it feels when you're in the club, doesn't it? It's such a shared experience. And that's what I always loved about raving and about house music in general. Its beginnings, it brought all of these cultures and communities together that didn't really socialize before. And that's the Spice Girls. That's the essence of the Spice Girls. The inclusivity is something so beautiful. And it's something that music does that nothing else can do. It speaks to people. It's communicating. Even if you don't speak the language, there's just something in us that connects to it, right? And I'm so grateful as an artist now, becoming a DJ, I listen to music differently. It's a whole new perspective. I set about making music differently, and even my performances, I'm so much more acknowledging of the audience, and that connection's become more important to me because when I was a young artist, I was selfish because it was all about me. Yeah. I'm having a good time. I'm feeling great. But now when I'm on stage, I love to look out and to make that connection, see people singing the songs, have this eye-to-eye contact moment. And I just think that is the beauty of music and being a performer.
I feel that. I think that's what's, especially when you experience that at a young age, it is so formative.
Yeah.
When you're in the crowd and people have, they've spent their hard-earned money just to see you, and then to have that connection, it never happens these days. So for you to take a moment and be pedestaling that and preferencing that is just
and the other thing I've always felt this as an artist, actually, it was something Spice Girls have always been very conscious of. It's we know how hard it is to make money, right? None of us come from money. We watched our parents struggle and we started out our careers with very little. So we know when you're a fan of somebody, you work hard to pay for those tickets, to buy that merch, So when it comes to doing shows, I never have a day off.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I am there, I'm giving 100%, whether I'm behind the decks, whether I'm up on stage, whether it's an acoustic performance, I'm very dedicated to what I do because I know I'm fucking lucky to be doing it. And I think I would like to think a lot of artists are like that. Maybe some more should be like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
Yes.
That is the problem this day and age. I know that you've just announced a tour.
Yes.
And you'll be back in Australia at the end of next year.
Yeah.
End of next year?
This year.
November.
Yeah. I'm back in November.
And it's 26.
I know. I'm the same. I'm like, last year,
okay,
this
what
year,
can
what
we
is it?
expect? I know, so we got Sweat on stage. I mean, we've had a Sweat tour recently with Charlie that set a bar for the Sweat brand.
Yeah, well, obviously we can't call the tour Sweat after Charlie. But, I mean, me touring Australia as an artist fills me with joy. Yeah. I've toured as a DJ a couple of times, but to not get here and with my musicians and play my own music is criminal. So I'm here now. And this album I will approach probably differently to other albums, but of course I'll be playing the hits. I'll be playing some Spice Girls, but the whole thing is going to be a party. This album is full of joy. I'm really leaning into my sporty side, having a bit of a tongue-in-cheek moment, songs like Sweat, and it's just going to be so energetic, full of fun, full of joy. I just want people to go home really exhilarated.
I really love this energy of you. You know, you're real, let your hair down.
Yeah.
Everybody careless. Let's just have fun together.
Oh my goodness.
Party, make a friend.
Yeah.
This can be the best night of your life if you want it to be.
Absolutely. And you know what? It's like, it's hard out there, right?
Yeah.
I don't even want to watch the news, right? So this is, again, why I'm so in love with this record, because it really reflects on the joy that I'm having being out there, playing shows, DJing and making music and being in love and spending time in Australia and all the fantastic things that have happened to me in the last few years. Yeah. And, you know, if it's for one night only, let's just forget the shit outside.
Yeah, leave it at the door.
Yeah.
Well, Melanie, we're going to have to wrap up. I can see you talking to you for
ages. I'm having a lovely time.
Thank you for being so vulnerable, and thank you for, you know, giving me your time. I know that, you know, you have to dive back into the archives so often in these chats, but for you to just tell these stories and have such great energy about it, and you really take me there. And I'm loving this album. I can't wait for people to hear it.
Oh,
I think
me too.
You're really onto something, and I think this is such a beautiful return to self.
Yeah.
And I love seeing that in an artist.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a lovely interview. I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, good. Yay.